Hello, I'm Nikki.
And I'm Jess.
She's the traumatized.
And she's the abandoned. And
welcome
welcome to our podcast.
where we talk about true crime, spooky things, and everything in between.
And today we're going to be talking about true crime. We back.
Woot woot.
Update, I'm sick.
Again.
I've been spending such amazing time with friends and family. Some friends have little ones, and little ones are germ factories. So it was just so cute when he was coughing all over the place, though. I couldn't help it.
So cute.
So cute.
Oh my goodness.
At least I haven't lost my voice, because my friend said that she was sick for a couple days and completely lost her voice. So I think if I got what they got, I at least caught it to where I haven't lost my voice yet. So there's that. Anyways, how was your week?
My week was good. Boring. I don't think I did anything.
Boring's good. I think we said that last week. Boring is good.
I cleaned my house, I guess. So
That's something.
And then I spent the whole next day on my couch because I overexhausted myself.
Oh no.
It's fine though.
That's kind of how I felt like last night, because we were hanging out. I started feeling like sick, and like literally by like 8 o'clock last night, I was like falling asleep on the bed. It's bad. Also, I realized you can see my ring light
in the mirror.
It's that big from back there. Like, that's far away. It's huge. But you do what you do for good lighting. Anyway, so you cleaned. Anything else?
Yep. That's pretty much it. How was your week?
It's really good because I'm getting to spend time with my friends and family that I never really got to spend time with them before. So it's really nice. But yeah, other than that, this week was really kind of chill. I think we both had really chill weeks, which was nice. Doing really good, like on a personal level. Like, energy is really high. I'm sick, but like mentally doing really good.
That's good.
I'm in a much better mental place. And anyway, want the fun fact of the day?
I do want the fun fact of the day.
Did you know that fish can actually drown?
What? How?
You know, you always do these follow-up.
You did it when you picked that out. You didn't think, how can a fish drown?
Honestly, I picked it out while I was explaining how my week went. They can suffocate when fresh water does not contain enough oxygen. So they can technically drown when there's not enough oxygen in the water.
Wow.
The more you know.
Fascinating.
Okay, so what are you telling me about today? I'm really excited.
I am going to be talking about the Sherri Papini case.
I've never heard of this. I'm excited.
Really? It's an interesting one.
Sherri Papini? No.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a name I would have remembered too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely a story you would have remembered.
Okay.
I'm actually surprised you haven't seen like the videos that Bose has done on them.
Oh, no. I need to watch more Bose. Bose is amazing. I was on her channel and everything with all of the Johnny Depp stuff. And then sometimes before that. But I really need to get back on watching her stuff because it's really good.
Because I love watching her.
She breaks it down perfectly. Anyway.
Yeah.
Shout out. We love you.
One day we'll watch her videos on this case.
That would be so cool. Okay.
Right. So November 2nd. Oh, wait, by the way, are we buckled up? We need to be buckled. Okay.
I was about to take a bite of a cracker and cheese, so I'm glad you told me before I choked on it.
November 2nd, 2016 was just another normal day for a family from Redding, California, a city north of Sacramento. Keith Papini headed to work while his wife makes breakfast for their 2 kids. Then the stay-at-home mom took the children into daycare and headed back home. Continuing with her normal day, she began doing her chores. And once those were done, she decided to go for her daily run.
Okay.
Then Keith arrived home from work around 5 p.m. to an empty house, which was unusual. He looked throughout the house and the yard, not finding anyone. Thinking they were on a walk, he waited it out for a bit, but something felt off, so Keith called the daycare to ask when Sherri had picked up the kids. And he was told that the children were still there.
Okay. At least the children are still there. I was like, oh no. Okay.
Keith, feeling something was wrong, turned to his phone and used the Find My iPhone app to locate his wife's phone. The app was saying that the phone was less than a mile away by their mailbox. Keith arrived in the area looking for Sherri, but did not see her anywhere. So he began looking for the phone, and he found it. He took a picture of it before he picked it up, though, so he's a smart cookie. But his first thought was someone took her. Missing Sherri is the title of my next.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. All right.
The phone was found with the earbuds wrapped loosely around it with a few strands of hair. Keith reports to the Shasta County Sheriff's Office with suspicious circumstances. Arriving deputies canvassed the area. Witnesses report last seeing Sherri Papini wearing a pink running jacket and jogging on Sunrise Drive. One recalls seeing her at 11 a.m., while another recalls seeing her at 2 p.m. So kind of discrepancy there, but either way, they saw her running.
Okay.
Search and rescue teams with the sheriff's office combed the area of Sunrise Drive and Old Oregon Trail. The California Highway Patrol assisted with an aerial search. So like a in the sky search. The community also responded right away. Hundreds of volunteers helped with the search for Sherri and looking for any type of evidence to point where she went.
Okay.
Sherri Papini's sister, Sheila Coaster, says the family thinks she has been abducted. Her sister said that Sherri would never leave her children.
Right.
Sherri was described as kind-hearted and devoted to her family, and her marriage to Keith in 2009 was described as a storybook relationship. They were a sweet young couple, a family who seemed to have it all. The odd thing about, or not odd, but her keys, purse, and wallet were all still found in the home, and
oh no.
There was no activity on her credit cards, and there was no evidence of her going to a bank or an ATM, pulling out money to suggest that she would run away. So it did indeed look like an abduction, like the family believed. November 4th, 2016, secret witness of Shasta County announces a $10,000 reward for information. So just 2 days after she went missing. On November 5th, family members add $40,000 to the reward, bringing the total to $50,000 for any information regarding Sherri's disappearance. The family refocuses search efforts to get the attention of national news organizations and social media networks. Keith was talking to all and every media station that would let him, trying to keep Sherri's face out there.
Okay. Oh, they're so cute. Keith did it. Sorry. Oh, did I make you choke?
For all those listeners, I had just taken a sip of water when she said that.
Sorry.
So, luckily, it didn't come out any other orifice. But if you know, you know. Anywho, so the family... Right. Of course, all these interviews were studied by investigators trying to find inconsistencies, because obviously the first person you look at is the significant other.
Obviously.
And Keith was looked into from the very beginning. And it's funny because he's asked in interviews, like, did you feel like a prime suspect? And he's like, no, I just wanted to know where my wife was. And like, so he didn't even realize that he was a prime suspect.
Interesting. Okay.
Because
he's guilty.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so Keith was a suspect, obviously. They had to look into him, especially when messages were discovered between the couple that were angry in nature. And Keith admitted in an interview that they had gone through a rough patch and that Sherri would get mad at him for like the littlest things. But Keith was very cooperative. He even took a lie detector test. And on November 9th, the sheriff's Lieutenant Anthony Bartain announces Keith Papini is not a person of interest in the case after he passes that lie detector test, and no physical evidence links him to the disappearance. Investigators were looking into everything. They found out Sherri was previously married and contacted her ex, but he hadn't heard from her in 6 years. So another dead end. At this point, a GoFundMe page was started up for the family to help in the search, and it raised almost $50,000.
Oh, dang. Okay.
After an exhausted search, they had no idea what happened. They were no closer to figuring out how Sherri seemingly disappeared in the middle of the day. On November 20th, the sheriff's office confirms it had served more than 20 search warrants and received about 400 tips. But again, they had no idea what had happened. Then, on November 24th, a Thanksgiving miracle happened. 22 days after Sherri went missing at 4:30 a.m., Sherri Papini is spotted by a motorist on Interstate 5 near Woodland, about 150 miles south of Reading.
She's spotted? Okay. That's a twist.
At 10:30 a.m., the sheriff's office makes public the big break in the investigation, stating she is safe, receiving medical clearance, and reunited with her husband.
What?
Sherri was found on the side of the road with a chain around her waist, with zip ties around her wrists that were connected to the chain. Sherri was covered in bruises, a rash, had a burn on her arm, was starved down to 87 pounds, and was branded. Her long hair was also chopped off.
Oh, jeez. Imagine being the one that found her.
Yeah, so I didn't really keep this in, but basically motorists were driving by and this woman talks about how she saw like a crazed woman waving a white shirt or something. She almost hit her and she just she kept driving and she pulled over and she's like, yeah, there's a crazy woman on the highway, but I wasn't gonna stop because I don't know what she would have done. You know what I mean? It's a scary situation.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, someone did stop and called 911. I mean, the woman stopped too and called 911. But anywho, after her medical exam, the investigators tried to get an initial interview in because this is the time where her memory is most
fresh.
Yeah. Yes. Sherri was extremely upset and hysterical, and instead of answering any of their questions, she just kept asking for her husband over and over again. Finally, the investigators pulled Keith in, and she would only talk to Keith. So basically, Keith was the one asking the questions in this interview.
Okay.
And as we know, having a family member with you in a formal police interview is not standard practice. So in the hospital interview, Sherri admits that she pulled out her own hair to set with the phone so that Keith would know that something was wrong. She also kept saying, I'm sorry, I got in the car, and stuff like that. Sherri was described as suffering from PTSD.
I wonder why.
A few days after the hospital, the investigators went to Sherri's home to do a full interview. Again, Keith was allowed to remain for the interview. Basically, the police were just trying to make her feel as comfortable as possible to get what happened. And so now it is time to hear Sherri's story. What happened? Sherri said that it was just a normal day, made the kids breakfast, didn't remember anything out of the ordinary, driving her kids to daycare and driving back, like nobody following her, stuff like that. She said that she was on a run in her neighborhood when a dark colored unknown SUV drove by, stopped a little bit ahead of her, then reversed. Then Sherri remembered a woman holding a gun to her to get in the vehicle. It was at this point that Sherri crouched to set her phone down, along with pulling out some of her hair to set with it. She claimed that 2 Hispanic women had taken her, an older one and a younger one. She described the 2 women with very different personalities. The older one seemed to be in charge, was mean and cruel. The younger Sherri described as more sympathetic, but they always wore a mask to cover their face. A mask or like a bandana.
Yeah.
Sherri claimed to have heard the women talking about selling her and that she was to be bought by a cop, which is why she was so apprehensive of the investigators.
Interesting.
Basically to be sold into like the sex ring and a cop was involved and stuff like that. In the interview, which is basically online, you can watch it all, there's a lot of chit-chatting trying to get Sherri to feel more comfortable. She also self-admitted that before all this happened, she had been a fan of true crime shows and admitted to reading Elizabeth Smart's book. Also, in the interview, she said it was easier to recount what had happened with her eyes closed. As you watch her interviews, Sherri talks a lot, but most of her details aren't really helpful to the cops. When asked about the branding, which she said it was the word Exodus that was branded onto her, she would mostly try to deflect from those questions. She described being held captive, chained to a closet, like a pole in a closet, which she said there was a bucket for going to the bathroom. She could reach the bed, but she couldn't reach the door. Then one day she heard a single gunshot. The young Hispanic woman came and got her, drove her back towards her home area, and let her go.
What?
And that's her story.
Okay.
So the investigation. Sherri's story that she told had a deep negative impact on the community. The community was already made of mostly white people who already had a prejudice against the Latino community in the area. When the 2 sketches of Sherri's kidnappers was released by people, basically the Latino community had to go underground. So one negative impact of Sherri's story was that a racist community against Latinos became even more racist against Latinos.
Jesus. Oh, geez. I'm so curious now. I'm so confused.
Meanwhile, it seemed that Sherri was suffering from PTSD and, in fact, received thousands of dollars from a government program that gives financial aid to victims of crime to help with therapy and such. During the investigation, the investigators kept information about the case very close. They barely released anything. But in 2017, it was released that they had found DNA on Sherri's clothing.
Okay.
The DNA was that of a male. The DNA did not match her husband, and the FBI ran the samples through the combined DNA index system, or CODIS, and found no matches.
What? Okay.
Then for years, the case kind of went nowhere, but behind the scenes, investigators were still working on the case. In fact, something that the detectives dug up was a blog. This blog post was a very racist blog post about Latinos, in which the author's name being that of Sherri's maiden name.
What?
This blog post was also from years ago, before this incident even happened, but it is still there.
Yeah.
The detectives confronted Sherri about this in a separate interview, and she denied that that was ever her. It was made up, blah, 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 whatever. But also, while searching her phone records, investigators were able to determine that in the days prior to her abduction, Sherri Papini was in touch with several different men.
Oh no. What? I'm so confused.
Police also began to question Papini's friends and ex-husband, who spoke about her tendency to lie and run away. People who knew Sherri started to describe her now as dramatic and attention-seeking.
Oh no.
Throughout all of this, though, Keith stayed publicly supporting his wife, believing that this was still an abduction. Time to talk about the breakthrough.
Jesus. Okay, I'm so confused.
It would take until 2020 for investigators to get the break they needed, when, with the help of genetic genealogy, that DNA was finally matched.
Okay.
It was matched to James Reyes. Who is James Reyes? Well, none other than an ex-boyfriend of Sherri Papini. The detectives went to interview James, and James was described as like a laid-back dude. He said that he had not spoken to Sherri in years, but after 50 minutes of the interview, the detectives confronted him with the DNA evidence.
Okay.
And James admitted he was just trying to help a friend.
Help her with what?
He said that she was trying to get away from her husband. She made claims to James that Keith had beat her. These were all unfounded. Not true.
Right.
As the detectives were interviewing, they began to look around the house and realize that it kind of looked similar to what Sherri had described being held at.
Interesting.
So, would you like to know the true story?
Oh my God, please. All of these wounds like self-inflicted?
He revealed that Sherri suggested he rent a car and come pick her up. and leave his phone at his apartment. He then traveled the 9 hours up to pick her up and the 9 hours back to Costa Mesa, where she stayed at his apartment with him for weeks. James went on with his normal life. He went to work, he played his hockey, etc. Meanwhile, Sherri stayed at his house. She had free will throughout the entire house. James also revealed that the bruises, cuts, burns on her body were largely self-inflicted, and that she had also asked him to hurt her. Reyes recounted to the investigators, Sherri Papini asked and begged him to brand her. According to James, they never had an intimate relationship while she stayed with him. She stayed in the bedroom, he slept on the couch.
What?
Then one day on Thanksgiving, she said that she missed her kids and just wanted to go home. So she asked James to get a chain and zip ties, and they drove back to the area and dropped her off on a rural road. And after that, she didn't even communicate with James.
How, I guess, fraud? I'm trying to think of how, what can you take her to court for something? It's fraudulent, right? Because she got all that money, maybe? I don't know. Wild. Okay.
Well, now we're gonna talk about the confrontation.
This is insane.
So
I'm wondering if she's gonna hold her her line, her crazy line.
In August 2020, an FBI and a sheriff's detective bring Sherri and Keith in for the final interview. They start the interview showing pictures of James' apartment, and in the video, it's plain as day. You can see Keith gets excited, even standing up, looking at these photos, very interested, because he wants to know what happened.
To know
answers. Yeah. He's like, oh my gosh, you guys finally found the place.
Yeah. Oh, and
Sherri,
she's like, fuck. Yeah.
On the other hand, is a bit dodgy when it comes to the photos. So they would show her a picture. This is how you described it. And she's like, yeah, it kind of looks the same, but this part's different. Oh, this is the table. And she's like, yeah, it kind of looks the same, but it's different. Almost every single picture that they showed her.
No, Sherri. Because
they kept asking her questions from previous interviews, questions she previously answered, but all Sherri would say, I don't know, it's been a long time, I forgot, I don't know. However, Sherri asked if they had found the house. When the agent says yes, that is when she becomes extremely excited and is like, tell me more, because she's trying to figure out what they know.
Right.
And it's really interesting watching the interview and watching how differently Keith and Sherri react to what the police are saying. Keith is basically jumping up and down, excited to get answers, while Sherri is drastically nervous. At this point in the interview, the investigators have made it very clear that they know everything about what really happened, and there is no way to describe it other than Sherri was the definition of deer in headlights.
Yep.
The police go on to say that we can keep talking with Keith in the room, or we can ask him to step out, because we know. So the question is, do you want Keith to know what we know that you know that we know?
I mean, Keith's gonna find out eventually at this point.
So at one point in the interview, I think before they start doing the actual confronting, Sherri asks to speak with Keith alone. So the detectives step out. She does something that most deceptive people do. She gets right in Keith's face and becomes aggressive, sticking to her story that she doesn't want the woman who let her go to get in trouble because she set Sherri free. So Keith at this point is kind of baffled. He's like, I want to know what happened. I need to know the truth.
Right.
So the police come back in, and she repeats that she doesn't want the woman to get in trouble. She keeps saying, I don't want the woman to get in trouble. She's the reason I hug my kids at night. And the police are sitting, every time she says that, they're like, she's not getting in trouble. The woman's not getting in trouble. She won't get in trouble. Trust me. The woman that does not exist is not going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Finally, they hit her with the DNA and they say that it's James. But Sherri doubles down and says that he would never, can't be involved. It wasn't him. There's no way. So they confront her with the injuries. Meanwhile, Keith is in the room, right? He's still in there.
Yeah.
So the detective is like, the reason why you had a rash is because you cleaned the apartment and you got a rash from the cleaner. The reason why you lost weight is because you just simply stopped eating. The reason why you have a bruise and a burn, bruises and a burn is because they were self-inflicted. You cut off your own hair.
Oh my God.
You had a broken nose because you slammed a hockey stick into your own nose. The brand that you had on your back is because you asked James to brand you with a wood burner tool.
Oh my God.
Keith was shocked. And you can visibly see him like lean back away from Sherri. And at one point he scoots his chair back from her.
No. I mean, yeah, how would you know that your person's that crazy?
And eventually he had to get up and leave the room. And at one point after the interview, he comes back in with the detectives by himself and he says, "I'm the idiot husband who stayed around the whole time," to the investigators. However,
I feel bad for making you seem guilty. I'm sorry. I sussed him out with you earlier.
I held my poker face very well, though.
I wasn't expecting the wife to just be crazy. I just didn't expect that. One does not expect that. Things took a lot of twisty turns. Okay.
So in the interview, she continued to deny when questioned, sticking to her story. She was abducted by these two Hispanic women, and eventually she ends up asking for a lawyer, shutting the interview down.
Yeah, I should have asked for a lawyer. Okay, anyway.
2 years later, March 3rd, 2022, Sherri was arrested on charges of lying to federal agents about being kidnapped and defrauding the state's Victim Compensation Board for $30,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
On April 12, 2022, Papini was charged with an additional 34 counts of mail fraud and 1 count of making false statements.
Okay.
Shockingly, after years of sticking to her story, 6 to be exact, she signed a plea deal admitting to the abduction of the hoax. She was facing 25 years, so I think that kind of shocked her. So Sherri Papini was sentenced to 18 months in prison, which was, I guess, double the amount that the prosecution even asked for. So the judge was like, yeah, no. 18 months in prison to be followed by 36 months of supervised release for making materially false statements to FBI agents about the circumstances of her own hoax kidnapping and committing mail fraud based on being a kidnapped victim. Papini was ordered to pay $309,902 in restitution for losses incurred by the California Victim Compensation Board, the Social Security Administration, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation for resources used during this whole fiasco.
Jeez.
Keith filed for divorce in 2022 and for sole custody of the children, obviously. And Sherri reported to jail in November 2022 and is scheduled to be released in 2024. Okay. And that's the story of the kidnapping that never happened.
Jeez, that's insane. I've never heard that. That's so crazy. Huh. Oh, wow. That's so crazy.
We'll have to watch those interviews one day. They're insane.
Insane in the membrane. Yeah, definitely will. That was wild. I was not prepared for like the twisty turns of that story. There were so many.
There's so many.
I'm glad you did that though, because like mine's more murder. So like I like when you switch it up.
Like, what's going through your thought process of this fake a kidnapping?
I don't understand it, because like,
go ahead.
No, it's just like I don't understand, like for publicity maybe to like get, but then there was this whole like, you know, Latino maybe racist, but then Reyes is a Spanish last name, so was her ex-boyfriend Hispanic? Like I'm so confused. I feel like you
and all right, you know, it's premeditated because she started doing all of those things while still with the ex-boyfriend, started bruising herself, started doing this. Like she had planned it out.
Yes.
And like I was wondering if you were catching the red flags during her story, especially when she was like, I can only remember with my eyes closed.
Eyes closed? Yeah, what was that? I don't understand.
And then I had been a fan of true crime stories. I had read Elizabeth Smart's book, and in Elizabeth Smart's book, she's chained, or I think she was chained
Elizabeth
up.
Smart's book. Okay.
I think Elizabeth Smart was chained up, and that's why there was a chain. And so yeah, there were like a bunch of little things, and like just like the deflecting, the whole like she would talk a lot, and you would think she's giving details, but she's not really.
Right,
giving helpful details,
and that was like, ooh, interesting. So that was wild.
So crazy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You ready for mine?
I am ready.
I feel like you've definitely heard it before, so we'll see. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you what we're doing. I'm just going to go into it.
Okay.
I'm going to let you know right now.
Buckle up.
Okay. Okay. I've been preparing myself for this. Okay.
Oh, God. Really?
All right. Mary Kellerman was a 12-year-old girl living in Elk Grove Village. The inquisitive 7th grader was Dennis and Jenna Kellerman's only child. They doted on her. Mary enjoyed making pottery and cooking with her mom, taking guitar lessons, practicing gymnastics, riding her pony, and playing Atari with her dad. She loved her 3 dogs and goldfish. Mary had actually began babysitting because she thought she was, 12 years old and wanted to be cool. On September 28th, 1982, Mary told her parents that she had a runny nose and a sore throat. Her parents went out at 4 p.m. and bought her extra strength Tylenol. The next day, she still wasn't feeling well, so at 6:15, they gave her 1 capsule to combat the symptoms. A few hours later, during the morning, her parents found her lying on the bathroom floor and immediately took her to the hospital, where she was pronounced dead at 9:56 a.m.
What? It's dropped dead?
Yeah. Meanwhile, we're going to keep going.
Okay.
Told you to buckle. Meanwhile, in Arlington Heights, postal worker Adam Janus buys a bottle of extra strength Tylenol at 11 a.m. Now, Adam was born on March 7th, 1955 in Poland. He was raised in a small farm in the southern part of the country. Janus and his family actually immigrated to the United States when he was 8. Him and his wife, Teresa, owned a tiny brick bungalow in Arlington Heights where they raised their 2 young children, Kathy and Thomas. Jess worked as a postal worker and enjoyed tinkering with clocks in his spare time. Back on September 29th, after buying the medication for his headache at 11, by 2:33, he was being taken to the hospital with his breathing labored and his blood pressure alarmingly low. Despite paramedics' best efforts, Adam was pronounced dead at 3:15.
The heck?
So less than an hour later.
Oh my God.
During Adam's funeral, his brother Stanley, along with his wife Teresa, began suffering headaches, obviously from induced tragic loss, the stress, everything. To combat these headaches, they each took a capsule of extra strength Tylenol at 5:40. Shortly after, they both began complaining of chest pains and grasping at their chests and collapsed to the floor. They were both admitted at 6:30 p.m. Stanley ended up passing away at 8:15. His wife was put on life support. However, she ended up passing away on October 1st at 1:15. So, suspicious of the 3 family members, all one by one, passing away.
Yeah, that's weird.
Police began investigating.
That's suspicious.
That's weird. Meanwhile, 2 firefighters talk about the deaths of Kellerman and the Januses. And they started putting like connections together, thinking, oh, what do all these people have in common?
Mm-hmm.
Asked to investigate Janus's death, Nurse Helen Jensen, Arlington Heights' only public official, visited the household and discovered that a Tylenol bottle with an accompanying receipt indicated that it had been purchased on the same day. Noticing there were 6 pills missing, she turned the bottle over to the investigator Nick Fishos and reported her suspicion that it might have been related to Janus's death. It was at this time that Dr. Edmund Donahue, Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for Cook County, asked Nick Fishos to smell the bottle. When Fishos smelled it, he reported an almond-like scent.
Oh, what is that? That's something. What is that?
Dr. Donahue's worst fears were coming to light after testing the remaining 44 capsules from the Janus's bottle. They contained nearly 3 times the amount of fatal cyanide.
Cyanide. Oh my God. That's insane.
While all this was going on, Mary Reiner buys a bottle of Tylenol on September 29th at 3 p.m. at Frank's Finer Foods in Winfield. Now, all these were taking place in Arlington Heights. This is now Winfield.
So, and were they buying their Tylenol from different places?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. Huh.
At 3:30 p.m., she takes at least one pill.
I'm going to be smelling all my pills now.
I literally have extra strength Tylenol, and I smelled it as soon as I opened it. But what's crazy thing about cyanide is not everybody could smell it. It's like 40% of the population could actually smell it or something like that. Like, not everybody can smell cyanide.
That's insane.
That's terrifying is what it is. I'm like, oh no. Okay. So Mary Reiner took one pill at 3:30 p.m. By 5 p.m., she was being admitted to Central DePage Hospital. And then on September 30th at 9:05, she was removed from life support and then pronounced dead. She was born on April 15th, 1955, as one of 8 children. Known as Lynn to those who loved her, she and her husband Edwin had a home in Winfield. Lynn had delivered the couple's 4th child days before her death.
What?
Her children, 2 boys, 2 girls, were 9, 8, 22 months, and 7 days old.
Oh my God.
Back on the 29th at 6:35 p.m., Mary McFarland tells one of her coworkers she's feeling dizzy after taking Tylenol at her workplace in Lombard's Yorktown Shopping Center and then collapses. Paramedics arrive 2 minutes later. She arrives at the hospital at 7:22 p.m. By the 30th at 3:18 a.m., she was pronounced dead. Finally, Paula Prince bought a bottle of extra strength Tylenol at Walgreens on Wells Street at 9:16 p.m. on the 29th. On October 1st, her body was found at 5 p.m. and she was pronounced dead on the scene. So she just went home, took Tylenol, and then that's a scary thing for me.
Yeah,
is like I'm here by myself. Like people call, like I have family people calling and checking out on me, which I think is really cute. But like, yeah, I'm like, oh, that's terrifying. I would just hate to just, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So, what the hell is going on? When the 7 deaths made national news, widespread fear emerged in the country, especially in the whole of Chicago area. With the examination of Tylenol pills taken by the victims, immediately found approximately 65 milligrams of cyanide, which again is 3 times the fatal amount of cyanide.
Jesus.
McNeil Consumer Products, manufacturer of extra strength Tylenol, was immediately alerted and a recall of the medicine was initiated. The situation was so serious that some of the state health departments banned all forms of Tylenol products, not just the extra strength Tylenol brand. Tylenol products were promptly removed from all the shelves of stores everywhere.
Right.
No one had any more intention of purchasing Tylenol products. The company's reputation was temporarily ruined from the terrible incident. The following month, several more contaminated Tylenol bottles were discovered in stores situated in the Chicago area. A heated manhunt for the perpetrator was initiated. Investigators eventually found their first suspect, James W. Lewis.
Okay.
The search for him started when Lewis sent a letter to Johnson & Johnson demanding a $1 million ransom to end the cyanide poisonings.
What?
On December 13th, 1982, FBI agents apprehended Lewis while Lewis's wife, Leanne, turned herself in.
Wait, so he just sent a letter, like, give me $1 million, XOXO, his name?
No, so I didn't have time to go into all of this, but basically the dumbass, like, he sent a letter from his old boss's, like, company and under, like, a pseudonym.
Okay.
But they were able to trace back the postmark or something to the old boss. The old boss was like, oh, and then they were able to trace him back.
Okay.
And I go into like the suspects, and actually there's a whole like the profile of the killer too, like how they came about it. So this is just like,
okay.
I figured I'd give you like,
I just find it funny if he was like XOXO.
XOXO, like, yeah. Give me that or else I'm going to keep doing this. So simultaneously, a threatening letter stating the writer's intention to blow up the White House and create more Tylenol deaths had been sent to the White House.
How does
it also? How do they correlate?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
They don't.
Okay.
They don't. This person doesn't seem very sane to me.
Clearly.
It also stated that the threats will be averted if Ronald Reagan didn't change his tax-based policies. Though Lewis is credited for writing the letters due to the similar handwriting, he had apparently an alibi for the fatal poisonings. He was with his wife in New York City, though he had reportedly traveled to the East Coast just as the poisonings began. And due to the nature of the product tampering, this isn't enough to completely exonerate him, but he had a loose alibi. Now, Lewis is, spoiler alert, Lewis wasn't convicted of the Tylenol murders, but he was found guilty of extortion and mail and credit card fraud.
Do you describe how the pills were made or anything, or? Okay.
I can go into it. I'll just tell you now. So basically what it was is like, and I'll go into it, but when you open up a bottle of Tylenol, there's that seal. Mm-hmm. That didn't exist before.
Okay.
So Tylenol and all pill companies now have that seal there so you could see, because basically what happened is they injected cyanide using like a syringe.
Into each individual pill?
It was coating it. It was coating it, which is how you could smell it. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was coating pills.
So back then, did they not have like the boxes and then the bottle? It was just the bottles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming. Okay.
So they upped, so basically he just went in and like twisted off the caps. In addition to Lewis, there are two other suspects that we're going to go into: Roger Arnold and Lori Dan. However, both were cleared of any involvement. Serial bomber Ted Kaczynski was also a brief suspect, but soon determined to not have been responsible for the crime. The authorities currently believe the killer could be a man caught by one of the affected drugstore CCTVs while observing victim Paula Prince buying the tainted pills. The identified individual bears a striking resemblance to James Lewis, but again, he was cleared. So we're going to break down these suspects and why we think they're suspects.
Is this killer not caught?
No.
Oh, well, that makes everything a hell of a lot more terrifying.
Okay. James W. Lewis, so this is the main suspect. He worked as a tax accountant. He was known to be a fraudster. The handwriting was positively matched to that of the two letters sent to the Johnson & Johnson and the White House. Again, the Johnson & Johnson letter demanding the poisonings. The White House letter was threatening to bomb it and continue the Tylenol poisonings. He was in New York City with his wife during the time of the murders and left the Chicago area in the early days of September 1982. He was able to show the authorities how an offender could hypothetically tamper with Tylenol pills with cyanide. However, he claimed he did it to help out. So he was able to show the authorities like how he would tamper with it and did it correctly. But he said he was doing it for science purposes.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
This is typical of other offenders such as Ted Bundy. Like Ted Bundy was really well known for like showing people how he would murder and like.
But I never murdered.
Right. The unidentified man seen in a CCTV footage of one of the affected drugstores bears a striking resemblance to him. The man appears to have been watching victim Paula Prince, who was also shown in the footage buying the tainted pills. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison for extortion and credit card fraud, but only served 13 years of that sentence and was paroled in 1995. So, Ronald Arnold contracted a nervous breakdown after being suspected of the murders. Shot and killed whom he believed to be a bar owner who allegedly turned him in, but in actuality, he mistook a random pedestrian for said bar owner. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison for second-degree murder, only served half that sentence, and then he had died in June of 2008. So, they suspected him. He had a nervous breakdown. He went and shot and killed who he thought had turned him in, but it wasn't. So it's terrifying.
Okay. Insane.
And then Lori Dan, who was a mentally ill patient with a history of poisoning attempts, then went on this is trigger warning. I'm sorry. Skip 10 seconds. If school shootings.
Ooh.
Yeah. So she went on a shooting rampage at an elementary school, killing one boy and injuring 5 other students. She then committed suicide after taking a family hostage and wounding a man. So she's no longer around either. So the only person who's still alive is the main suspect, who is James Lewis. So I thought it was really interesting. So this is the profile of the killer. For some reason, I didn't think, I watched Criminal Minds and I knew they did it, which I thought was really kind of cool. So I wanted to share what they thought the profile of the killer would be.
Right.
So John Douglas profiled the Tylenol killer as being a white male in his late 20s to early 30s who would be a depressed, nocturnal loner driven by rage. He'd have bouts of severe depression and feelings of despair. He'd feel inadequate, helpless, hopeless, and impotent. being at the same time convinced that society always maligned him in an unfair way. His life would be characterized by a long list of personal failures concerning education, employment, social experiences, and relationship with women of his own age and intelligent level. Some of his feelings of inadequacy could stem from a physical disability or ailment. He would gravitate towards positions of authority or pseudo-authority, such as security guard, ambulance driver, auxiliary firefighter, and would have trouble keeping his job. He could also have a military background marked by behavioral problem and psychiatric treatment. The unsub fits the assassin type, consistently thinking about killing but never laying his hands on the intended victim. He committed this type of crime as a result of precipitating stressor he suffered in mid-September of 1982, such as the loss of a job, wife, girlfriend, or possibly a parent. His MO suggests not particularly organized or methodical offender, but rather a sloppy and distracted personality. This would be reflected in the car he drives, possibly a police type, large Ford sedan, which would represent strength and power, both of which what he lacks. Like, this is insane to me that they can just like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Though it can't be completely excluded that he's a disgruntled employee or former employee of Johnson & Johnson, McNeil Consumer Products, or the targeted drugstores, it is more likely that the offender was motivated by general rage or resentment against society that had wronged him or ignored him. Likewise, the choice of Tylenol might or may not be significant. In all probability, he would have written letters concerning his perceived wrongs to people in positions such as President Ronald Reagan or Chicago Mayor Jane Byrne at the time. The feeling of having been ignored gave him reason to escalate, and the offender would also keep a scrapbook, diary, or journal of some kind detailing his activities, which would reflect his feelings of inferiority. That's wild. I don't understand how they do that, but I think that's criminal minds that do that, right? They do like the unsub thing. That's so cool how they create this whole profile based upon some copycats.
Oh no.
There have been several attacks of copycatting the Tylenol killer. Two notable copycats are Stella Nickel, who lived in Seattle, Washington, filled capsules of Excedrin with lethal cyanide. However, she just targeted her husband, Bruce, poisoning his medicine before leaving contaminated bottles at the store, hoping to poison others in order to reclassify Bruce's death as accidental so she could receive his insurance money. Attacks killed 40-year-old Susan Snow, who also poisoned Snow's husband, but he was rescued. Failed a polygraph test that she continuously rebuffed. She was sentenced to 90 years in prison. So basically, she murdered her husband and then tried to put tainted Excedrin bottles on the shelves to make it seem like it was another one of these.
So not even Excedrin is safe.
Which I also have. This is gonna kill you too. Joseph Maling spiked Sudafed decongestants with cyanide, which is what I use. He tried to poison his. But these guys are
where are these people getting cyanide? Can you just order cyanide?
Is that a thing you can just order?
Buy cyanide?
You definitely should not Google that.
We would be horrible criminals. I was like, how do you even get drugs? How do you even just see someone on the street?
Drugs? I don't understand. Is it
hey, do you got the good?
You got that cyanide? I mean, it's almost as bad because I had this new lotion, and I have, for the life of me, I keep saying it's hydrochloric acid that I'm putting on my face. People give me looks, and I'm like, oh no, it's not the right one. It's like what is it, hydroloric or something?
I don't know, some fancy thing.
It's not hydrochloric because that will burn my skin off. Anyway, all right, so spiked Sudafed with cyanide. He tried to poison his wife with the medicine in order to collect insurance money. 2 people were killed with that attacks. He was sentenced to life in prison.
So what? He did the same thing. He put it on the counter. He was like, "Hey, wife, go buy Sudafed."
Or to me, it seems like they poisoned and then they were trying to cover up. So then they tried to poison the store.
Okay.
I think is at least I know that's what happened in Stella's case. I think that's what happened in Joseph's too. I think it was a afterthought. Oh yeah, I should probably cover this up.
Idiots.
So to wrap it up, as of today, no suspect has been charged or convicted of these poisonings. The New York City resident James W. Lewis was convicted of extortion for sending the letter to Tylenol's manufacturer Johnson & Johnson that took responsibility for the deaths and demanded $1 million to stop them, but evidence tying Lewis to the actual poisoning never emerged. The incident led to reforms in the packaging of over-the-counter drugs and to the federal anti-tampering laws. So now it's safer. Also terrifying. That's why you have the anti-tampering like things. So
the seals.
Check those. Make sure there's no holes in them. Because they would just stick like a needle and inject it and coat it. But cyanide actually breaks the pills down. So that was one of the big things. They were like, maybe it happened in the manufacturer because there were like 2 places that got it like separate from each other. But cyanide breaks the pills down. So they only had like, I think it was like 24 to 48 hours before the pills were broken down. So it had to happen like in the store.
Because they were coating actual capsules, not like pills. Right.
Correct. And it was breaking down the pill or the capsules part.
Yeah.
Cyanide.
Crazy.
So yeah. So just, check your tampering stuff.
Freaking Chicago. They're uncaught serial killers. There's one there currently where it's suspected. There's this guy on TikTok that comes up once in a while, and apparently young males are going missing.
What?
Yeah, and they're ending up in the river and in water, and like the police isn't saying a thing. But there's like multiple men that have gone missing and showed up in the waters. And the guy on TikTok speculates that they're getting rides because, a woman's not going to take a ride from a stranger, but a man wouldn't think twice because like, I'm a man, I can take anybody. But if they're drunk after a night out, and then they accept a ride and they disappear and end up in the river. Like that's happening currently.
Jesus.
So if you're in Chicago and you're out for a night, don't take a ride from a stranger.
No.
And don't go have a buddy. Always have a buddy system. It's what we had to do in the military. It's what you should do now.
That is a really good point too, because you don't think about it like men. It's always like women are we're trained from a very young age to like never go anywhere by yourself, to always look over your shoulder, whereas men are always like,
I absolutely hate going to the park with Beanie by myself.
That's so scary.
I hate it.
That sucks that you feel that way too, because it's like it's the park, you know what I mean?
We're just trying to have a good time.
Yeah. But
yeah.
Anyway. And that's it for this episode, guys. If you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to follow us. Leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Hi. Like and subscribe. Do it. New subscribers every week. We love to see you guys.
You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with our username at TTATA Podcast. And in the bio of all of our social medias, our link tree, which has our email if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to talk to us about, hit us up. Let us know.
Woohoo! Thanks for listening. Next week, we're going to be covering horrifying history, which we haven't done. I feel like we haven't done that in a minute.
For the first time ever, I don't have an idea what I want to do.
I do. What?
This
is double crazy. First time. I know what I'm doing. What is happening? And with that, we're going to leave you with this inspirational quote.
The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. By Nelson Mandela.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, always get back up. You get knocked down. You gotta get back up again. Because genuinely, like, you come back stronger. You come back better. I'm so tired.
We can just say goodbye. We don't have to elaborate on the quote.
But it's a really good quote and it deserves it. I have no more brain power. All right, guys. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Bye. Bye.